Expedition 35 Commander Chris Hadfield, home from orbit, 5 months in space. Chris, welcome back.
Thanks, Rob.
An amazing adventure, an amazing odyssey all the way around from start to finish. I'm always fond of asking the question about if you were an historian sitting in your library at home writing the novel about not only Expedition 35 but 34 that you started your stay on orbit with, what would you consider the major accomplishments that you and your crew pulled off?
I think if you're looking at it through the lens of a little longer time scale, like a historian looking back, I think you could really call this when the station started to truly flower. You know, we've been planting it and watering it and cultivating it and watching it turn nice and green and budding, but we set a record for the numbers of hours of science done in a week, and then we blew away the record for the amount of utilization done in an increment between 34 and 35. And it's not like the crew suddenly became magic. It's because there's enough vehicle up there. There's the learned way to do things on the ground. That we have built a capacity to do what the station is for. And it all sort of came into a full flower and fruition during those two. So I think that's why we built Space Station. It was to be a huge orbiting research vessel. And during these two increments, we got a chance to take it to the limit that it's never been to before. That is probably the most measurable and historic, significant product of what we were trying to do up there. But from a personal point of view, of course, the ability to maintain an extremely high pace of ops, to be clearing off not only all the work we're supposed to do, but a bunch of work that was, hey, if you get enough time, try and do this list of other things, what's called the task list, and getting that cleared off. And then, you know, people going, gosh, I hope they still have some energy left over. But on top of that, still being able to, on almost no notice, do an EVA within days of undocking and coming home, and engaging the public through some of the new technologies that are on board through communications and social media, that we got to get all those things put together while still maintaining the core fruit of what the station's for. To me, that's kind of the synopsis of what was significant about it and what I'm most proud of.
I'm always struck, speaking of history, to turn the clock back 18 years for your first mission to the Russian space station Mir. It was a complicated flight. You brought up a docking module. It was an extremely intricate mission. And it was in the neophyte days of the Shuttle Mir program that set the stage for work on the International Space Station. Could you have ever imagined fast-forwarding 18 years and looking at what you just pulled off?
You know, it's interesting. When I was training on my very first shuttle flight to go to help build Space Station Mir, of course, just recently I'd been a fighter pilot in Canada intercepting Soviet bombers in Canadian airspace. So even at a personal level, this was an amazing transmogrification of directions and intergovernmental agreements and things, and on the pointy end of both. But I was also training with a crew that the backup crew was Pavel Vinogradov. Pavel Vladimirovich Vinogradov was the backup crew, and he was over at our house in 1994, jet skiing and water skiing and getting to know him, and never thinking that, hey, maybe 18 or 19 years from now, I will hand over command of a space station to you. You know, the thought of that would have just been outlandish to think that that was going to happen. So for the two of us to be together on orbit, the personal bond that was there and all of the history it represented was, I think, it would have been outlandish or completely unreasonable to expect that might happen. But also, I think if you were James Michener writing the big novel that had all of the twisted, interconnected things that happen that bring you around to the actual events of real life, it would have been like that, where these paths cross and you take these people and you learn how to take a spaceship to a space station and build things, and you get a glimpse inside of what real space station life is like. And I was only on Mir for a couple days, but I got the first great whiff of what this could be like to live in orbit. It opened a huge desire in me to come back, to not just go build something, but to go live there. I would have loved if there'd been some reason why they left me behind on that flight and I'd got to live on Mir. And then, of course, going back to help build station, and then 18 years later, whatever, to go live and command the International Space Station, Even now, even having been there for 5 months, it is a surreal sequence of events within one life. I count myself inexplicably lucky.
I'm not a big social media guy. I know the word viral. What you created up on orbit was sort of a worldwide epidemic of interest through tweeting and all of the other stuff you did, and with all due respect to David Bowie, exhibiting a pretty good voice up there.
Thanks.
The impact of social media, your ability to communicate this to an audience that at one time would have been impossible to reach,
Right.
and collaterally reaching some degree of rock star status up there, I might
Yeah.
add. Have you had a chance at all since you've been home to reflect on the impact of all of that?
Something I decided way when I first got hired as an astronaut was I am there on behalf of other people. I'm putting on a blue suit, and I am getting trained. There are a lot of people are contributing their tax dollars so that I can go do something as one of the first, so that it helps improve our capability for more of us to do it in the future. The public trust of us to do that properly. And so I have been trying to explain what we're doing. Took as many pictures as I could, film pictures with a big Hasselblad on that first flight, and then trying to show people how beautiful the world is. Trying to tell people, you wouldn't believe how gorgeous the world is. But if you're showing a picture you took 9 months ago and it's kind of grainy and you're using 35 millimeter slides in a high school gymnasium, it loses something. And so I just maintained that same effort, but now suddenly with the improved capability, with the great rock solid stability and power and improved capacity of space station, you can almost set up a little studio up there, and you can definitely transmit at quite a high data rate. So suddenly I could real time do what I'd been trying to do for the last 20 years, and that is share the experience. And I didn't know that it was going to work like it did. Not at all. I hoped I could. I didn't even know whether I'd be able to tweet from orbit. I wasn't really sure what the connectivity was going to be. But it turned out that I could take a picture and within minutes get it to Earth. And so that I could call down on the space to grounds, and within minutes people from all around the world can see this picture of the fires burning in the outback of Australia, or a volcano, or whatever, Boston right after the hatred that happened there. And it fed on itself. People suddenly realized, hey, this thing that we built, and we have a few representatives up there occupying, actually helps us see ourselves a little bit better. It helps us see our whole planet a little differently. And to be able to share that, to be able, because it's something all the astronauts have and internalize, you can't help it being up there, but it's so hard to properly, like narrating a sunset, something is lost in the narration. But the immediacy of it, of social media, and Twitter's the right word, because it just creates a rising hubbub of people chattering and mutually being aware together of something that's happening. Just like if all of you were looking at something, going, hey, look at that, hey, look, hey, wow, that's great, look. And the whole world is doing that about the space station. And for me, it's not the core of what we were doing. I'm most proud of the science we got done. The vehicle's healthy. We did a spacewalk to fix something pretty critical. We set records for the amount of utilization. But at the same time, we also engaged our home nations as well as the whole world to a level that's never happened before. And I think it is to the mutual benefit of all. And I'm very proud also of our ability to do that. And it's just the result of the improved technology that has been put on board, the opportunity that's there. And I'm really glad that we figured a way to do it.
And the space station, the International Space Station, this multinational laboratory, this platform, city in a sky that some people have referred to it as you backed away, heading for a landing in Kazakhstan, your thoughts must have turned back to the enormity of it, not just as a vehicle, but as a human feat. What is the impact of the International Space Station in your mind?
The space station is our first species step away from home. There's a lot of reasons why we should do it the way we're doing it. And there's always, conflicting thoughts. How should we be leaving Earth? Should we be leaving Earth? Should we go to the moon? Should we go to an asteroid? Should we go to Mars? You just look back in history. If you want to sail across the Atlantic, you don't start designing a boat and then point and start sailing. You sail within sight of land for a long time, and you figure out how to beat scurvy and how to sail across the wind and how to keep track and navigate and learn about all the things you need to know. And then you start sailing further and further. And eventually, you can sail with confidence much further into the unknown. The space station is that vehicle, that enormous test bed that is still sailing within sight of land, teaching us how to leave the planet. And we're not just doing it as one entity, but we are doing it really just against all odds, against a lot of historical conflict, but we are doing it. And the space station is there as a shining, undeniable example going over. And it's inspirational to people. And it is teaching us as a species, as a planet, how to work towards something together in pursuit of the unknown. It's hard to maintain. It flies in the face of all of the petty stuff that's going on. But at the same time, it flies. And I think when you look back 50 years from now, that will be Station's biggest legacy.
Chris, welcome home. Thanks very much. Congratulations.
It is wonderful to fly in space, Rob, but it's really nice to be home.